Hello. I come to you from hotel room. Welcome to the live. I managed to get here to the hotel and on relatively on time. So this is rescheduled from last night, and I just arrived to Santa Barbara to the Metabolic Health Summit. I have not done anything but get into my room, but it is a lovely room. There are clothes on the bed, but I'll just a little tour. There's my ring light, which I brought with me. Look at the lovely, I got a little seating area here. There's chair, a really nice chair. I closed the blinds a little bit because the light was weird, but you can see I got like a little gardeny view. If I were on the other side of the hotel, I would have an ocean view. But I'm okay with this. They upgraded me to the garden view as opposed to like the parking lot view. So that way is inland. There are big mountains. And literally the hotel is right on the water. So it's beautiful. Hey, Amy, will you really be here? Or are you just joking? Because it'll be great to see you. So we're here in Santa Barbara for Metabolic Health Summit, and I just arrived. I'm like was literally just in the middle of hang up clothes. I was like, I gotta hop on with these guys. So I'm super happy to be here, answer any questions. I can't yet answer any questions about the summit because I haven't yet attended it because it starts tomorrow. And I decided I would hide out in my room tonight and get some stuff done so that I can concentrate on the summit when it starts tomorrow. Oh, nice, Amy. Well, it doesn't start until tomorrow afternoon, so you're good to go. You got lots of time. Um, and the hotel is lovely. Santa Barbara is lovely. I'm just gonna move in. I think that's what I'm gonna do. And what am I looking forward to at the summit? Well, seeing a lot of friends is always a really nice part of all of this. I'm also going to be excited to hear a couple of people talk. Tommy Wood is talking, who I think is just really smart. We've got Dom D'Agostino, who's one of the co-sponsors, hosts of the conference. Gosh, top of my head, trying to think. So many really smart people. Eric Kossoff from Johns Hopkins talking about epilepsy. So this conference is really focused on sort of it's not just ketogenics, metabolics. So the idea behind talks a lot about ketones, therapeutic uses, so cancer, Alzheimer's, like a lot of real health stuff. It's not like basic like weight loss kind of stuff. Though I mean that might come in but it's more like at a deeper cellular kind of level, kind of going deeper into metabolism, like not just trying to lose 10 pounds, which, but yeah, but what is the underlying insulin resistance, all that good stuff. I'm just rambling now. Rita says, will anyone be able to listen? They are selling a virtual ticket. I believe it's $99, metabolichealthsummit.com. If you want to tune in and watch the whole thing as it's going on and then keep the recordings, that is available, but it is not going to be free, as far as I know. But you can buy a virtual ticket for sure. I'll try and give updates from the weekend. But if you are somebody that's interested in it, the schedule is online. So if you go to metabolichealthsummit.com, you should be able to find who's speaking about what, so you can get an idea if it's a conference that you would get a lot out of. So that is what's happening. And then at the end, I get home on Monday from this, and then that Friday, yeah, here, let me grab it for you, Rita. Hold on. Googling. Where are you? I lost I was like, what's the tab? So there we go. Ooh, I'm spinning you. Let me see, I can put this on the screen. There you go. That's where I am. And so if you want to go there, you can see who's speaking. Nancy, I'm not speaking. This conference is you need to be a PhD or a MD, but probably a PhD and an MD, both, to speak. It's a pretty high level conference. They don't do a lot of behavior stuff. It's all the very deep science stuff. So not as much what they look for coaches like me for. Cheryl says, so I kind of look at my job as getting the good info from these people, of which there'll be a 30-minute talk, of which maybe the average person will understand 2 minutes, then I like try and get you to understand 5 minutes of it. That's kind of my job. So um, that is not to say the average person is not intelligent. Just to be clear, it's just that some of this is very complex. Um, and when my first year of attending these kind of conferences, I got about 2 minutes of what they were talking about, and then I had to like read several articles, and then I'd be like, okay, now I understand like maybe about half of it, but that's about it. And I was like, you know what, that's probably enough. Because I am not actually somebody that treats people with like cancer, so understanding the basics is very helpful. But knowing, which specific mechanism does what is maybe less important, is what I've decided. So that's what's going on. Rita, it is Thursday evening, Friday all day, Saturday all day, and Sunday morning. So it's 3 days, 2 half days, 2 full days. Um, Thanks, Pam. I appreciate that. I try. Cheryl says, having trouble getting over the keto flu. My friend says, do higher protein and keto carbs every meal. So the keto flu, what people call the keto flu anyway, is a combination of factors. It's one, electrolyte depletion. So that is easy to fix. Uh, uh, Amy, if this is your first one and you get a quarter of things, then you're doing better than I did my first one. So we'll take notes. So back to keto flu. Keto flu, it's a combination of two things. One is carb withdrawal, which is just the fact that here's the deal. When we go into ketosis, so it's that transition. So going into ketosis, your body is used to accessing glucose as your main fuel. Most of us going into ketosis we've been very glucose based, we're insulin resistant. When you're insulin resistant and you now are removing glucose, your body gets very confused. And so you might feel like a little low energy, a little run down, a little like, I can't get, that feeling when you're a little tired and you eat like a candy and you're like, got a little energy. Your body's like, where's the energy? What's happening? So that's just, you just feel a little less, you don't feel, it is not a little literal feeling of sickness. It's a lack of energy, right? It's that pulling of energy into your body. That's where eating higher protein can be very helpful, because that protein can be made available for energy. So a higher protein approach at that time, very helpful. And just not calorically restricting at that time, very helpful as well. Don't undereat when you're going into ketosis. Make sure you're getting plenty of fuel. And so that's like high fat meats, bacon, eggs, cream in your coffee. Just like give yourself all the food that you feel like you want. Then, but make it low carb food so that you're helping with that adaptation across the spectrum. So, eat a good breakfast, a good solid breakfast, eat a good nice solid lunch, eat a good dinner, like eat solid meals. Try not to snack too much, but when you're new, if you need to, have some cheese, some salami. Just don't undereat. You can deal with how much you eat once you've gotten adapted in a few weeks. Then the second part is electrolyte withdrawal. So what happens when we first get into ketosis is we diurese, we pee a lot. I'll just say it the less scientific way. We pee a lot because our body is just got very loud, dumping our electrolytes out in our urine, right? So we are needing to replenish our sodium. So electrolytes are sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and chloride, but mostly sodium is the one of biggest concern, especially when you're new to this world or you're renewing yourself in the ketogenic world. So get lots of salt. Also, we're eating more whole real foods. We're not getting as much processed foods, and processed foods that are high in refined carbohydrates, they pack that full of sodium. So you're already getting less sodium. Cheryl asks, will ketones help too? Great question. So if somebody is trying to sell you a ketone supplement, that's a question. So some people do say that ketone salts, like Prove It is a brand that a lot of people will say is very helpful in transition. So potentially, I will say, one of the reasons that a ketone salt can be helpful is not as much the ketone part as the salt part. So you could get that from an electrolyte drink too, or just a lot of sodium. Um, Ketones may or may not help. I don't think they're a problem. The issue is ketone supplements are very expensive and they're also not beneficial for fat loss. And so a lot of times what happens is, like, as an example, the most popular brand I can think of is Prove It. Prove It is an MLM. People will try and sell you the Prove It product. And it's not so much there's a problem with a little bit of the product, but now this person wants to rely on you potentially for their sales cycle. And you kind of have to like commit to a certain package, and eventually you're not going to want it and it's going to feel weird. And it's just the relationship that gets messy. So I would just avoid it altogether. I do think ketones, exogenous ketones, can be helpful for people with neurological issues. So if you have a traumatic brain injury, you have epilepsy, there can be uses for exogenous ketones. And in fact, at this conference, we're going to talk about some of the uses for them. Weight loss is not one of them. And so, if your primary goal of entering ketosis is to look at increasing your weight loss and your metabolic health, long term use of them are not going to be helpful to you. So, kind of depends. If you're like, hey, I've got some on hand, it's like, okay, we'll try them, see if they make you feel better. But mostly, what makes people feel better, I really honestly think, is the salt in them, not the ketones themselves, but your results may vary. Um, so lots of sodium, eat when you're hungry, and don't try and restrict your food, and you'll probably feel a lot better. All right, what I miss? Docs and gal. Lipid panel, triglycerides 80, total cholesterol 245, LDL 135, HDL 95. Now elevating. Okay, first of all, I have to say I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, and nothing that I say should be taken as medical advice. I will tell you that I'm going to take this off the screen because it's distracting, maybe. Um, so here's what often happens, and you can find out more information about this at cholesterolcode.com. Cholesterol code, CODE, the word cholesterol, and then CODE.com. There's great cholesterol info from my good friend Dave Feldman and Siobhan Huggins there. And so they're very helpful about cholesterol issues. So one of the things that they find is that sometimes if we're metabolically unhealthy and we have higher cholesterol, we will often, as we become more metabolically healthy on keto, find some of our LDL goes down. Now, is it your LDL that's going up or is your HDL going up? Which one is going up? So you have very high HDL, by the way, very, very high HDL, which is usually pretty good. High HDL is thought to be very protective. So your LDL in and of itself is not that high. It's that your total cholesterol is higher because your HDL is so high. So if you think about it this way, right? If let's say it's like, I need a better way to think about this. If the reason your total cholesterol went up is because the protective type of cholesterol went up, that is a net good thing. So your numbers are not ones that I would be concerned about. I do think that LDL can go up a little bit. This is what it seems is once you get lean on keto. If you're fairly lean, if you're fairly metabolically healthy, you don't have to be skinny mini, but you're healthy-ish and leanish. Sometimes that LDL can actually start to rise on a ketogenic diet. That's not uncommon at all. And Dave talks about that a lot. So if you want more research on that, go to cholesterolcode.com. All right. Katie says, can it cause anxiety during transition? Yes, it can. And actually, I talked about this with Georgia Eade, who's a MD, not psychologist, psychiatrist. I was like, wait, which one's a MD? On a podcast on keto life support that you can find. But Georgia and I were talking about it, and it is indeed true. There are a couple of reasons why you might have increased anxiety during keto flu. The first is actually low sodium. So having too low a sodium can affect your adrenals, which can affect your cortisol. So you can have a physiological stress response from being too low in electrolytes. So that's one, easy to fix. Get some more sodium in you. The second thing is that a lot of us use carbohydrates medicinally, right? So, who has not had an upsetting event and eaten a container of Ben and Jerry's ice cream? Right? I mean, it's even a joke that we make that if somebody broke up with you, you eat a pint of ice cream. So we are very used to in our society using especially high sugar, high fat combinations, but very high carb, high sugar foods as a mood adjuster, right? We medicate, we self medicate with food, we medicate our mood. Hey, it rhymes. We medicate our mood with food. And so when we remove that self medicating element in terms of at least our usual go tos, that can really be put us in a tailspin. And so it definitely can be an issue and something we have to sort of look at moderating. So that's where I would say not under eating during that transitional time is super important. Um, Hazel, or is it Hazel? All right, Hazel. Sorry, it's Hazel or Hazel. Either one, very lovely. Uh, which one do I choose to always stay in ketosis or sometimes out of ketosis? I'm out of ketosis a lot of the time these days. I was probably in ketosis like 100% of the time for like maybe 3 years on keto. I don't think you need to stay in ketosis all the time. I think there might be some benefit to not, well, I certainly think there is a lot of benefit to not worrying about it. I don't think for the most part there's a lot of damage to staying in ketosis all the time either. But honestly, unless you're treating a neurological illness or some other type of disease that requires you to have high ketones for suppression of symptoms or treatment, such as epilepsy, in which case it could be very dangerous to get out of ketosis for some people. Um, Not a medical doctor, not going to tell you that it's, I'm saying if you have information that you should stay in ketosis to treat an illness, I'm not going to suggest to get out of it. But I also think there's not a lot of problem to hopping in and out of, like, if you're like, sometimes my ketones are zero point 0.2 and sometimes they're zero point 0.6 and then they're back to zero point 0.3 and then they're up to zero point 0.8, and then if you're kind of like bouncing around in that range, I don't think there's any problem at all. What it's telling you is your body is fluctuating the amount of ketones that you're making. Maybe you're eating in a way where you're getting a little more carbohydrate, but you're also seeing that you've got suppressed insulin most of the time. Because when you see any degree of blood ketones, by the way, I'm talking about blood ketones, not urine ketones, different measurements. And but in terms of your blood measurements of beta hydroxybutyrate, what that's saying is your insulin is staying low enough that we're seeing some ketones being made. And if you're primarily looking for ketosis as a way to help you with navigating metabolic syndrome, that lowered insulin level is telling you that you're in that range. So potentially, I think there's a lot of benefit there. And I think more than anything, it's about making your life work, and stressing out over why your ketones aren't 1.5 all the time is probably not beneficial to your mental health. So I don't have any condition where having ketones is essential for me, and so I don't stress about it. And these days I eat more low carb than keto, so my ketones are generally very, very low, very like zero point 0.2. Um, Alexander says, I've tried ketones. It seemed to slow my ketone production on your own. Yeah, there is some evidence that exogenous, it is when you take something, often your body will be like, we don't need to make as much. And taking ketones doesn't help with fat loss. It hinders it because you're putting them in, right? So it's like the way that ketone production can help with wasting sort of your own body fat, which is kind of what you're trying to do when you're trying to lose body fat. You want it to be used for something. Um, is if it's like, I don't know, right? It's like you want to use the rain, but you pour water on it, and then it's like, well, now we're not using the rain, we're using the water we put. That's a terrible analogy, but you can, if you're taking something, your body's not gonna liberate your own fat, right? Because it's much easier to use what you're ingesting. All right, all right. Safe flight, Amy. Docs and Gal says my visceral fat is down to 7. All right, well, great. Uh, Dr. Gal, I had told you element. I thought at first because of puffiness. Now you're liking it, not elevating blood pressure. Great. I'm glad you're enjoying it. There at this conference. So I'll be seeing them tomorrow. Um, all right. Hey, Linda. Good to see you. All right. Let me see if I missed anything. I think that might be it. All right. All right. So let's see what else is going on in the world. Um, I was in a car all day. I was just listening to podcasts, driving in my car. So I've got a lot to catch up with for my group Keto Unstuck. Do some lessons for them tonight, and I'm also working on the book because I promised Ken Berry, Dr. Ken Berry, that I'm going to get it done this weekend. So going to work on it. I've got the labs book definitely coming, people. It's coming. I swear. I'm sorry. There's a lot to do. I am a busy girl. And then also, I am sometimes avoidant of things like editing because it's not that exciting. The book's great. It's more like, does this line up with that? And should this be bigger and that smaller? And why is the font this size on this page and this size on that page? I'm I should probably give it to my brother. What am I thinking? My brother is an editor, but he's so busy. I didn't want to bother him. He used to be a newspaper editor, like an editor in chief of a San Francisco newspaper. So he's a great editor, but I myself am not as patient as all that. I prefer to speak upon the internet where I can just open my mouth and let words come out. So I'm happy to be here with you guys tonight. I'll just talk things. I'll just talk about it. All right. So what else is there to talk about? Oh, when you want to test if a certain food or product is impacting your glucose, at what intervals you should test? Thank you for the question, Pam. I'm like, please give me questions, people. Um, so usually what I would say is it's totally and completely useless to test a product unless you test your glucose before you eat it. Some people will be like, I ate this thing and my blood glucose went to 150. And I'm like, what was it before? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, can't help you. So you have to get the baseline. So generally speaking, if you want to test a food, what it does to you, you want to start by not having eaten probably for a couple of hours. You don't want to have them affect each other, right? So give your body a good 3-4 hours of break before. So it's kind of like if you're like, well, I want to test this dessert, but you like just had dinner. Gonna be a little. If you want a really good test, you're gonna want to test it a little more in isolation. So give yourself like it's because when you're doing these kinds of tests, often it's not like you eat like this every day, but if you're like, look, I just want to test this keto brownie and see what happens, then maybe have the brownie before. Anyway, so you want to test it in isolation. So give yourself a good 3 hours from your last meal, and make or in the morning, or make that last meal something doesn't really cause a lot of fluctuations for you. Maybe just a fat and protein based kind of meal mostly. Give yourself a good 3 hours and drink water and stuff like that, but don't have food or things that are going to mess with your glucose. Then take your glucose. Take it carefully. Make sure your fingers are clean and all that kind of stuff. So I'm talking about if you did a finger prick test here. Take your glucose, make note of it, eat the food, and try not to eat it like over hours, right? Eat the food, like start eating the food. You don't have to eat the food. Then you're gonna test again right when you're done. I always do it this way. Then I'm gonna test 30. It doesn't have to be right when you're done, but okay, here, let me lay it out better. Sorry, okay, let's call eating the food right before you start to eat the food at 0. So you're gonna test right before you eat the food at 0. Then your first test is going to be about a half an hour later. So you're 0, 30, 0 plus 30, right? 30 minutes. Then another 30. So 0, 30, 60, 90, 120. So you're testing every half an hour until 2 hours later. Now, if at 2 hours you're not back to baseline, keep testing every half an hour until you are. So let's say you were at 90 milligrams per deciliter. You ate the food a half an hour after you start. So like from the 0 time, 30 minutes later. So you can start your timer, right? 30 minutes later, you're at 120. So oh, it went up 30 points. Then another 30 minutes later, you're at 110. Then another 30 minutes later, you're at 100. Then another 30 minutes later, you're at 87, right? Then you're like, okay, I'm basically back down to baseline. So you kind of just follow that curve. Now, one thing to know is anything within 5 points is the same. So 90 is the same as 85, is the same as 95. What do I mean by that? There's just a range of tolerance on those finger tests where that's about as accurate as you can assume they might be. So don't freak out if you're like, wait, it was 90 and now it won't go below 93. Same number. Same, anything within that range, just consider the same, basically the same number. Okay. So and that's a very tight tolerance meter like a Keto Mojo. Some of the commercial meters are 20%. So the accuracy, sorry, my nose, allergies. So 20%. So that would be essentially 20% of 100, right? That's anything from 80 to 120 being about the same number. So that's how I test things. Debbie says, oh, Docs and Gal says, I knew all about it from you. Yeah, well, I'm happy I gave you a primer. And now you can tell your doctor things they don't even know. Debbie says, hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My ketones are usually 0.3, but I've still lost weight and my glucose has gone from 110 down to 86. I am fine with that. Yep. There is no reason. Like there are some benefits to being in ketosis. Absolutely. There's a whole conference I'm at about much of that. That being said, higher ketones are not required for metabolic health and are not required for blood sugar regulation. Uh, Point 0.3 is going to tell you that you're suppressing high insulin levels. You're going to be becoming a healthier person. There's no reason to stress about it. Jeannie, 2 questions. My eating window is normally 12 noon to 6 p.m. every day. Does it make a difference if I eat my protein in 2 meals or can I spread it over 6 hours? Also, should I be moving that window around like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. a couple days of the week, 7 to 1? Okay, that's a good question. Um, it is yes, it does matter. So let's talk about muscle protein synthesis, shall we? Okay, so muscle protein synthesis. Okay, so this is how a live video is when I'm like, okay, how am I going to? I always feel, that meme where the guy's like the crazy guy with the charts and the strings. I feel like that. Um, so our body requires us to rebuild itself, right? We have something called muscle protein synthesis. That is, we synthesize new protein or new muscle and we need protein to trigger it. So essentially our body is breaking down every day, right? Muscles get damaged, cells get damaged, we need to then rebuild. So we're constantly taking out the bricks, putting the bricks in, taking out the bricks, putting the bricks in. We're like the wall that's never built, right? And so there is something that is required to trigger muscle protein synthesis. So let's say this is a very low number in terms of protein, and I'm not going to recommend that you eat this low protein. I'm just using it as an example. But well, actually, let's pretend you're a very small woman. I don't know. So maybe you're like you need 90 grams of protein in a day, maybe, right? Now, if you did something where you said, I'm gonna need my calculator for this situation. It's a hypothetical situation. So 90 divided by 6. Nope. Okay. So let's say you decided, "Eh, I'm gonna snack. Gonna snack. I'm not gonna do meals, I'm gonna snack." And you like at noon you had a little bit of salami and cheese, and then at 2 you had a little more salami and cheese, and then at 4 you had a little more, and so you're just doing these little snippets. And so you got 90 grams of protein over the course of the day, but it was in like 15-gram increments. You would not meet the threshold to trigger appropriate muscle protein synthesis. Whereas if you got 3 meals over the course of that day, um, and it's you got 30 grams of protein in each one of those meals. Each one of those meals would likely trigger muscle protein synthesis. Why is that? There's a threshold that you got to get over. If you're just under it the whole day, you're not triggering muscle protein synthesis properly. So, and there's something called a protein refractory period, which means that once you've got that meal window you eat, there's a certain period of time where like more protein won't add to that protein. So if you're just eating too little an amount of protein very, very frequently, you're getting a lot less benefit. Now, that's not to say that one meal of 90 grams triggers more protein synthesis than three meals of 30, because you got to get over you got to get yourself over the line, but being further over the line doesn't trigger it more. Right. So I'm not against someone eating three meals, but I am kind of against you eating six meals for a variety of reasons. One of which is we do want that insulin to come down between meals. So, yes, don't just graze for 6 hours. Do not to do it. It is not my recommendation unless you are underweight and each one of those grazings is a lot of food. If you're trying to lose weight, you will find that will be ineffective to graze for those 6 hours. Eat concrete, definitive meals. If that's three, so be it. But let's not snack like that. Okay. All right. Hopefully that clarified. Oh yeah. So and if you want to do two meals of 45 grams, that's great as well. But I don't love one. If you're um, a little older, you probably need at least two protein feedings most days. And and three might be better, but two is probably enough. Okay. I can talk more about protein if you want. It's my favorite topic these days. Mazinda. Ooh, Mazinda. I've never heard that name. Very nice. I probably mispronounced that. I apologize. Um, is it better to eat avocados and avocado oil rather than cooking with butter? Great question. Kind of depends. So avocado oil, avocados, they're higher in monounsaturated fats than saturated fats. Butter is more of a source of saturated fats, although almost all fats are a combination of mono, poly, and saturated. So, you know, mix it up. I'm a fan of butter. I think it's very tasty. I'm also a fan of olive oil. Uh, and I think eating avocados is fabulous if you love avocados. I would say, though, that cooking with butter, avocado oil, or olive oil are all great things to do. I'm not really worried about one or the other, depending on, what you just like. And so, yeah, I think avocado, I tend to cook with olive oil these days. People used to think that olive oil wasn't good to cook with, and it's that they're wrong. There have been studies that show that it's great to cook with. The Italians have some things right on that, right? And and I prefer the flavor of cooking with olive oil to avocado oil, but avocado oil is totally good to cook with as well. I love to eat avocados, but I don't eat them that often. But they're very tasty, and some people really love them. But I love cooking eggs in butter. I think that tastes delicious in a way that it does not taste the same to me to cook it in olive oil. So I pick the substrate of cooking the thing that's going to taste the best for me. Butter, because butter has butter solids, it does have it'll burn. So I don't cook at very high heat in butter, but you could use ghee, which is clarified butter. Generally speaking, I just try to avoid soybean oil, safflower oil, that kind of stuff, much more than I worry about butter to cook with. Today, when I did have lives at the hospital life fast, I think there might be some typos in, like some, there might be some, I don't know what that means. But your glucose was 96 after a 16 hours. I thought that was pretty high. Yeah, it is a little high, but any individual glucose reading can be a little bit confusing because maybe you had trouble finding a parking space before you got there. Maybe you were a little late and you were rushing. All sorts of things can impact any particular glucose reading. So just one glucose reading can be very anomalous. So you want to look at like maybe your A1C, is that in alignment? Anyway, Scott. Scott is saying, I'm gonna have a little water. They gave me water. Um, I've been listening to your podcast where you talk about periods of cutting and periods of maintenance. I do. So it's called nutritional periodization, and it's something I actually think is very important. Probably less important when we're like 300, 400 pounds. But as we get closer and closer, and so I think there's never a bad time for it because it's like skills that we're practicing as we're going. But as we get from maybe like the obese category into the merely overweight category, I believe it becomes more essential. And then as we get from like the or like more obese to the only slightly obese to like maybe like normal weight, but like still want to lose a few pounds, it becomes as you drop, it becomes more and more and more important, in my opinion. So, why do I think it's so important? Well, one, I think it's very important that we practice being in maintenance. So, periods where we're not trying to lose weight. I think it is mentally very, very important to have the experience of eating healthily but not trying to lose weight, because that's going to be the rest of your life, right? And I think to take some time to practice that is important. And then the second part is that it's sometimes when we are dieting, trying to lose body fat for a long time, we encounter something that's very important and is always happening. So it's not like, how people will be like, I damaged my metabolism is damaged. No, your metabolism adapted, and that our metabolisms adapt is a fabulous thing. It is why we live. It is why we are still here as a species, because we are adaptive, because our bodies will deal. There, famine, we got you. We're going to turn the thermostat down. We're going to turn down the volume so that your body burns barely any calories. You're welcome. So that's how your metabolism works. And so, what happens with long term restriction for a lot of us, and again, the leaner we are, the more intense this effect is, but it is true along the way. So, you ever notice how, once upon a time you would eat like 1,500 calories and you'd lose weight, and then eventually you would stop losing weight at that amount? That's metabolic adaptation, that your body turns down the thermostat so that you can sort of like, let's hibernate because this person is clearly in a famine, right? So, metabolic adaptation needs to be worked with a little bit. And so, when you periodize, when you go through periods of restriction and then you come up to maintenance and then back to restriction and then up to maintenance, some hormones will regulate better, like thyroid hormone can sometimes become suppressed during extreme, not extreme, but like long periods of restriction. And so your thyroid function can upregulate. Things like leptin and ghrelin can get into better alignment because those can go a little wacky. And then just diet fatigue. I think a lot of us suffer from diet fatigue. A lot of people will say things like, I was perfect for 2 years, and then I like had a cookie, and all of a sudden I just can't do it anymore. It feels awful. I just want to rebel. I just want to eat pizza and beer, and like I can't do it. It's like we just can't do it anymore. It's called diet fatigue, and it kind of can sort of like surprise us and like smack us over the head. And so when you go through periods where you're going up to maintenance and come back into a deficit, going up to maintenance, come back into a deficit, that can help with the diet fatigue. It's times when you can do things like have fathead pizza. And so I'm not suggesting we eat all the crazy things that got us sick in the first place, but we eat more calories, we eat more fat, we enjoy some extra food, but at a level where we're maintaining our weight rather than gaining weight. We don't want to do that. And it can be very freeing, very, very freeing. It can also be a time when our body will prioritize like muscle gain in a way that it won't always in a deficit. So there's a lot to recommend periodizing your nutrition that way. Now, a reverse diet is a specific approach within that. You don't necessarily have to use it. But let's say you've gotten to a place where you're pretty sure that metabolic adaptation has gotten pretty severe, and you're like, I should, in the body I'm in, be able to be eating like 2,000 calories a day, and I can't eat more than 1,300 without gaining weight. Then you might need to undertake something called a reverse diet, where you're just trying to like nudge your caloric ceiling up. And so that's a specific type of approach that you can do as well. I have podcasts on the topic, as you said. Grateful Keto says if you starve the gut bacteria that process veggies on a carnivore diet, won't you have digestive problems when you try to reintroduce them? Well, I mean, that's a kind of a good question. So, when you don't eat anything for a while, you might experience some digestive upset when you reintroduce it. But the good news is that's usually reversed in a number of days. So, yeah, if you went carnivore and then you reintroduced vegetables, I would say do not start reintroducing vegetables with like a pound of Brussels sprouts. That amount of fiber your body is not used to dealing with, and you will give yourself some incredibly horrible gas and pain. So go slow. But usually within a couple of days to weeks, you're going to have no problem reintroducing some of those things into your diet. So the body is pretty resilient. Just don't bombard it all at once. And it tends to be also that we are better at digesting fruits than fibrous veggies. So know thyself, go slowly and cautiously. Um, Scott says, or is it more to break a stall? I started at 300, down 170. Good job, Scott. I know you've told me that before. Um, uh, I want to keep seeing. Okay, so yeah, uh, often that point at which somebody will finally be like, "What's wrong with me?" Is when they are like, why can't I lose any more weight? And they hit that stall, and it's a very long stall. Often that's when a reverse diet is called for. It was probably called for a long time ago, but it's like if you skipped the steps along the way and you just tried to diet down, 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 and then you sort of like like crash landed into the floor, and you're like, I can't get any lower. I am in the basement. That's when the reverse diet can be very helpful. That's what I ended up doing. I ended up doing a reverse diet when I hit a super frustrating stall and I could not figure out how to get out of it. I did a reverse diet, and here I am. I lost another 35 pounds after that. So very helpful. I'm actually probably needing to do another one at this point, and I'm resisting it, but I do need to. Um, all right. Karen says, I'm in this salami and cheese examples and I don't like it. I'm sorry. I was not looking at anyone in particular. I don't throw shade. I just sort of seem to cast it naturally. All right. Let's see. Kelly says, am I derailing myself by not testing ketones? No, you don't need to test ketones. I mean, some people find it helpful. I really enjoyed it at the beginning because it just helped me feel more secure. But if you're just trying to lose weight and improve your metabolic health, then it's not necessary. Tina says, if I go out of ketosis, I gain 3 to 5 pounds of water from inflammation. I see it in my hands and ankles. How does one switch to low carb and deal with this inflammation problem? So, what kinds of things are you eating when you go out of ketosis? Is a question I'd have. Most likely, if you started, if say you chose to eat more, I don't know, lettuce and broccoli, and you weren't sensitive to the fiber in there, that you probably wouldn't experience quite so much of that inflammation. Here's the deal: when you eat a high carb meal, every gram of carbohydrate brings some grams of water with it. It's like brings friends. So that hydrate, carbohydrate, right, brings water. And so your body is going to gain weight because water is heavy. This is water. It's heavy. Right? So when you add water to your system, you will be heavier. You won't be fatter. You won't gain fat. So if you eat like a single meal of carbs, you will weigh more. You will not have gained fat, but you have more water in you. So you weigh more. So some people freak out about that. Not all water weight is inflammation. Now, if you feel puffy, if your face is puffy, your hands and your feet are puffy, that's maybe more inflammation. But I just wanted to say, not all. And I got this wrong when I first started keto and started talking about keto. So, not all additional water weight is inflammation. There, you can have more water in your body that's not inflammatory. Just wanted to say that. It might be, but it's not only. So, Tina, the first thing I would say is the types of carbohydrates you're choosing to eat. If they're highly processed, refined grain type things that your body does not like, that's going to be bad choices and should not be eaten. Just shouldn't be eaten. But if you were like, hey, I would like to eat more fruits and vegetables, well, then eating more fruits and vegetables for most people, if they choose the types of fruits and vegetables that their body seems to enjoy, while it might cause a little more water to be stored in your body and your organs and things like that, it's not going to cause you to puff out all over in your hands to get all swollen. Victoria says, someone who has a lot of health issues, hormones out of whack, traumatic brain injury, oof, how would they deal with a meat aversion? Meat aversion is tough. I might, well, one thing I would say is TBI. So earlier, remember how I said exogenous ketones not helpful for people transitioning to keto necessarily or with weight loss? They are seeming to be helpful for things like TBI. So that might be a person that I might have check out exogenous ketones. The second thing is if they're having a meat aversion, protein shakes. So Keto Chow has great ones, but there are other brands that are good as well. But I would try and get them on protein shakes. The nice thing about Keto Chow shakes is they add all the vitamins and minerals that you would get from eating meat. Um, and so I would probably get that person on some protein shakes and maybe some ketones. Hopefully that is helpful. Eggs cooked in bacon fat taste good too. Yes, it does. But I just love butter with eggs. I like the bacon fat as well, but my favorite is really the butter. Um, Crowell House. A number of years ago, my husband fasted for 2 weeks and then broke his fast with a large salad with garbanzo beans. Oh, that's, I'm not laughing. I'm in pain. Ow. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Oof. Sylvia, I had been stalled since September. I have started increasing calories, gone from 1400 to 14 to 1800. Should I continue to stay there for a while? So what happened when you increased the calories? Did your weight remain stable? I usually say is like when you're trying to increase calories, try to find the ceiling. So that means if you're still maintaining your weight, I keep going until you start to see the weight go up, and then step back down until the highest number where you're not seeing the weight go up. She also hates protein shakes. I'm just laughing because that's the way it goes. My mom, are you talking about my mom? I think you might be. She does, but she doesn't have a TBI that we know of anyway. But all right. So I had a client with with meat aversion, but she would eat bacon. So sometimes the meat aversion is a texture issue. So it might be like um the egg white bread, like Maria Emmerich's egg white kind of bread. That is very high in protein. Like you can make peanut butter sandwiches with that. Um, I would find a way to try and get the carbs down, get the protein up, maybe get some ketones in her. Use MCT oil in things. Um, Also find out what they don't like about protein shakes. Maybe there's some way to make it happen. But something's got to happen. What do they like to eat? Maybe there can be a version of it. Sylvia says I'm gaining and losing the same 4 pounds. Yeah, you're still maintaining weight. Um, we all have a 1 to 2% water weight fluctuation. So if you're up and down the same 4 pounds, and you're somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 pounds, that would be normal water weight fluctuation, not a gain or loss of any body fat. I have no idea how much you weigh, but that's what the numbers would say. Um, what is a reverse diet? So a reverse diet is literally just going to try and bump up your caloric ceiling. So you go to like your top maintenance range, and then you just very slowly increase the calories. Very slowly increase the calories. So let's say you can't get above 1300 calories before you start to gain weight. So then you're going to go to like 1350 for a week on average, like your daily average is 1350. And you're going to try to go to 1400. Then you're going to try to go to 1450. You're just going to slowly bump up the caloric intake until you start to see some weight gain and maybe through a little bit of weight gain. And then you're just going to hang out there for a while. You're going to start to do things like increase your workouts. You're going to try and get more steps in. You're going to try and get better sleep. You're just trying to like do all the things you can to optimize your health and augment your ability to eat more. So adding muscle mass, moving more, eating more, and you're just trying to like very slowly raise the ceiling. And so by repeatedly doing this, you can potentially start being able to eat more. Hey Ken, how you doing? I'm here. Um Silent Runner says, oh, Grateful Keto says, I'm doing a carnivore elimination diet. If I sorry, I can't talk right now. If I reintroduce nightshades, how will I know if the reaction I'm getting is because I lack gut bacteria or I have a sensitivity to them? If you just so if you reintroduce them slowly, you probably will be like I don't know if you have a reaction to them when you reintroduce them in small quantities, then you will. It's not the bacteria is not that specific. Don't worry about that. So if you eliminated them for at least 30 days and you reintroduced small quantities of them, then if you get a reaction to that, then that tells you that you probably have an issue with that. Yeah, Pam. Dr. Barry is like, Kim, when are you is the book done yet? No, he's very patient and very lovely about it. It is me that is like, Um, all right. Fasting blood sugar is consistently 105, no dawn effect. 4-hour eating window, 112, 117. Included yogurt, 2 ounces of blackberries, half pint of Halo Top. Tried to check peak blood sugar, highest I got was 130. So I would say the Halo Top is maybe an issue. I might and yogurt and blackberries potentially are might cause some people a little more glucose. So what is that? So you're saying it's always around 105, even if like you're eating bacon and eggs. What does it do after you eat bacon and eggs is the question. Now, what I'm seeing here is you don't have that much of an excursion, right? So if you're starting at 105 and your highest is like 120, that's only a 15-point increase. So that the amount your blood sugar is increasing is fairly appropriate. So I'm curious because your name is Silent Runner if you might be an athlete. Are you actually a runner? Um uh because some athletic lean people seem to have higher fasting glucose levels. And so that is a thing that can happen. And so, what I would actually look at is adaptive glucose sparing. So, Google adaptive glucose sparing. You might be in that bucket where your body is sort of primed. You're like a cheetah. Your body is like primed to run at all times. And so it kind of keeps you at that higher level, but it never goes that much above it, right? So that can happen. And so the question is, is that a problem? And what to do about it if it is more of an issue. What did I miss? Cheryl said, okay, I missed something. Did I miss something? Because I see you helping each other. Cheryl, I missed your question. I can't see it. I will have to greatly up. You're having muscle cramps at night? So yeah, definitely electrolytes first line of defense there. Especially okay. As long as you guys are figuring it out, it's good. I thought I missed a question. So if you're good, you're good. All right. Well, it's coming up on 8 o'clock. So I think that's been an hour. So we'll call it a day. I'll try and check in with you guys after the conference and see what's going on. Does anyone, all right. If anyone needs me, I'll be around. So talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.